Welcome to Mr. Horror. Tonight, we have a chilling tale that will make you think twice before setting foot in an arcade. It's a story of a place where the lines between the living and the dead are blurred, where the echoes of the past still linger, and where the spirits of the departed refuse to rest in peace. So, get ready to enter a world of terror and fear as we take you on a journey to the haunted arcade. It was an arcade on the outskirts of town that had been around for decades. It had all the classic games, Pac-Man, Space Invaders, Donkey Kong, and a loyal group of regulars who came back week after week to relive their childhood memories. But as the years went on, strange things began to happen. It started with just a few glitches here and there, a game that would freeze up, or a joystick that wouldn't respond. But as time went on, the glitches became more frequent and more unsettling. One night, a group of teenagers were playing a game of skee-ball when the lights suddenly flickered and went out. When they came back on, the room was different. The walls were covered in a thick layer of grime, and the air smelled musty and stale. As they stumbled through the darkness, they heard strange noises coming from the corners of the room. Whispers and shuffling footsteps that seemed to be getting closer and closer. When the lights finally came back on, the teenagers were huddled in a corner, terrified and confused. That was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, strange things continued to happen at the arcade. Games that would turn on by themselves in the middle of the night, strange graffiti appearing on the walls. And then, one night, something truly terrifying happened. As the last employees were closing up for the night, they heard a blood-curdling scream coming from one of the back rooms. When they investigated, they found one of the regulars slumped over a game of Space Invaders, his eyes wide open in terror. There was no sign of what had caused his death. From that night on, the arcade was forever changed. The regulars stopped coming, and the few employees who remained whispered about a dark presence that seemed to lurk in the shadows. No one knew what had caused the strange occurrences, but they knew one thing for sure: the arcade was no longer a safe place to be. After the death of the regular, the arcade became even more desolate. The few remaining employees worked in fear, constantly looking over their shoulders and jumping at the slightest sound. The once brightly lit game rooms now seemed dark and foreboding, and the old machines that used to bring joy to visitors now seemed like they were cursed. One employee, a young woman named Sarah, started to experience strange occurrences. At first, she brushed them off as her imagination playing tricks on her, but soon she couldn't ignore them any longer. One night, as she was closing up the arcade, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around to find no one there, but as she started to walk away, she heard the footsteps again. Only this time, they were getting closer. She quickened her pace, but the footsteps kept following her, until finally she broke into a run. She made it to the employee break room and locked the door behind her. As she tried to catch her breath, she heard a voice whispering her name from outside the door. She froze in terror, not knowing what to do. The whispering continued, growing louder and more urgent. Finally, Sarah mustered the courage to open the door, but when she did, there was no one there, only a cold, empty hallway. As the weeks went on, the occurrences became more frequent and more violent. Machines would turn on by themselves, their screens flashing with strange symbols and images. Sarah started seeing ghostly apparitions in the corners of her eyes, shadowy figures that seemed to be following her everywhere she went. She tried to tell her coworkers what was happening, but they just laughed and brushed her off. They didn't believe in ghosts or curses or anything like that, but Sarah knew what she was experiencing was real, and she knew she had to find a way to put an end to it. Sarah did some research and discovered that the arcade was built on top of an old cemetery. It seemed that the spirits of the dead were not at rest, and they were lashing out at anyone who dared to disturb their resting place. Determined to put an end to the haunting, Sarah decided to perform a cleansing ritual. She gathered some candles, incense, and a piece of quartz and headed to the most active area of the arcade, the game room where the regular had died. She lit the candles and incense and began to recite an incantation. As she did, she could feel the energy in the room shifting. The machine started to quiet down, and the air seemed to grow lighter. Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped. The candles flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. Sarah heard the whispering again, louder this time, and then she felt something cold and clammy touch her arm. She tried to scream, but her voice was stuck in her throat. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything stopped. The temperature returned to normal, and the whispering ceased. Sarah knew that she had succeeded in banishing the spirits. She felt a sense of relief wash over her as she gathered her things and left the arcade for the last time. As she walked away, she couldn't help but look back at the building one last time. It seemed to be glowing faintly, as if it were alive with some kind of energy. But Sarah knew that it was just her imagination, and she quickened her pace, eager to leave the cursed place behind her. Years later, Sarah still couldn't shake the feeling of unease that she had felt in the arcade. She knew that the spirits were gone, but she couldn't help but wonder if they had left something behind, a lingering energy that still haunted the building to this day. And so, the arcade remained abandoned, a ghostly reminder of a past that refused to stay buried. Thank you for joining us on this bone-chilling journey into the haunted arcade. We hope you enjoyed this terrifying true story and that it left you with a sense of unease that will stay with you long after the video has ended. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to Mr. Horror for more spine-tingling tales. And as always, be sure to share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, sleep well. If you can,